Okay, in this video I want to talk a little bit about resizing images for use on your Velcro in Photoshop. So the first thing that you want to do is open your image and sort of get an idea of what size this image is. And actually Photoshop gives us a clue up here. The bar that goes across our photo tells us the name of the file, and then it tells us what percentage we're seeing it at. So we're seeing this at 100%. So this is the full size of the picture. Now depending on what screen you're on, you may or may not get an accurate picture of what size this image is. If you're on a really high resolution screen and the screen is really big, the image is probably not going to look the same size as what you're seeing right now. So you want to go to Image, Image Size, and you'll get a dialog box that tells you the size of this image. And the first thing you want to look for is here, the resolution. Remember that web resolution is 72. You want your image to be 72 pixels per inch because on a computer monitor there are about 72 pixels in every inch. And so our image is already sized correctly. The next thing that you want to do is get an idea of how large the image is. How many pixels is it across? How many pixels is it tall? And this image is a little more than 1,000 pixels across and about 700 pixels tall. Now we can easily change that, and you'll see we can type in here and change the size of this image. But I want to make you aware of a couple different things going on in this dialog box, and the first is constrain proportions. This box needs to be checked when you change the size of an image. Checking this box will make sure that when you resize the image, it doesn't get stretched at all. The second thing you need to be aware of is this resample image box. Whenever this button is checked, it means that you are giving Photoshop permission to either add pixels or subtract pixels from the image. That means Photoshop will use some mathematical equations to determine how many pixels it needs to take out of the image to make it the size you want, or how many pixels it needs to put in. Now you might be asking yourself, if Photoshop has permission to add pixels, how is it adding pixels? This image is 1,000 across. It's 768 tall. Where are we going to get extra pixels? Well, Photoshop is going to actually create new pixels and add them in. And what it will do is it will look at what kind of pixels already exist, and it will add similar pixels. So over here in the image where we have red pixels, Photoshop will add more red pixels. Here where it's black, Photoshop will add more black pixels. Over here, Photoshop will add more white pixels so that this image can get bigger. And you can see that if I uncheck resample image, I can no longer change the pixel dimension of this image. I can only change the width and the height in inches or some other measurement that's not based in pixels. So you do want to click resample image. However, keep in mind that you are subtracting or adding pixels. It's always okay to subtract. It's sometimes okay to add, and it's okay to add only a certain amount. For example, this image is 1,000 pixels across. I would probably not want to make it 2,000 because I would have to double the number of pixels. And that means the image is going to be half pixels that Photoshop made up and threw in. And so the quality of the image is going to start to degrade. So if you have an image that is this size and you're going to go ahead and shrink it, that's fine. Let's imagine that our WordPress site needs an 800 pixel image. We'll type in 800 and you'll see that because constrain proportions is clicked, the height will change along with the width. So now I can hit OK, and you'll see that image shrink. And that is now 800 pixels wide instead of 1,000. So that's a really simple way of resizing. Now, if you have an image that is very, very small to begin with, and here let's open this small image. This image is, image size is only 460 pixels across. Now, it's the correct resolution. If I want to make this much larger, let's say I want to use it as a background and I want it to be 1,700 across, Photoshop will let me do that. But it's going to create and add a lot of images, or I'm sorry, a lot of pixels. So look at the image now. It just looks pretty regular. If I add all these pixels and I hit OK, it's now starting to look kind of crummy. The sky is really gross. It's got these dots all over it. This building back here is like a collection of splotches. Gray splotches, brown splotches. It just doesn't look very pleasing. And that's because Photoshop invented pixels and added it to this image. And your eye starts to pick up on the fact that some of these pixels are maybe not the same color as the pixels near them. And so this image starts to look really degraded. So try not to add pixels if you can avoid it. If you have to add pixels, maybe add 20-30% more pixels, but definitely what I did is I just almost quadrupled this, so now it's starting to look really crummy. So I'm just going to go in my history and go back to open, and you'll see I undid the image size and it's back to the size it was when I got it. If you have an image that you need to blow up that much, the best thing to do is try to find a better version of that image. Try to find a size that's already larger. Go back, this is an image from a digital camera, go back to the place where you put those digital camera images and get the original file. And then you can shrink it down to 1700 instead of blowing up this small image. So try to avoid blowing up images as much as you can. And I'm going to go back to the Velcro because there's one other strategy that you can use to change the size of images, and that is the crop tool. The crop tool is this tool right here, and up at the top in our toolbar across the top, we can actually set the width and height that we want this to be. So if we want this to be 800 pixels, we can type in 800 there, and let's say we want it to be 500 pixels tall. Now I can only draw a box with those proportions. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Keep in mind that this image is only 1,000 pixels wide. So if I try to zoom in on this, and I'm saying that I want just this to be 800 across, it blows all those pixels up. It adds more pixels, and we're just kind of blowing the image up again, just like we would if we had a small image and we added images in the image dialog. So again, this is looking really junky. This edge right here looks really bad. This area that's supposed to be black is not even black. It's just like a bunch of red splotches. So I'm going to undo that. And when you are using the crop tool, try to keep in mind the size the image already is. So this is already 1,000 pixels across. So I wouldn't want to zoom in that much. I can do something like this and it's still going to add pixels, but not nearly as many. So if I hit OK, you can see that I've now cropped that to 800 by 500.